Let's talk to Dr. Alan Mendoza, founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, which advocates the spread of liberal democracy. Dr. Alan, listen, thank you for being back on the show this morning. And what we heard there, a bit of an analysis about, how the war is going so far, not in Russia's favour. Would you agree with that analysis?
Oh yes, I mean they would have obviously hoped to have been far more advanced by this stage of the conflict than they have been. I mean, none of the major Ukrainian cities sit in their control. They're in a situation where they've lost troops, they've lost material, they've lost vehicles. It's not the kind of start to a campaign you'd have wanted if you were after a fast, quick lightning strike.
The worry is, though, that they do have other weapons they can use that will come back to nuclear. But what about these thermobaric rockets? Do you think they might start deploying those, which are really deadly?
Well, the great fear is that the more desperate Vladimir Putin becomes to secure his victory in the shortest possible time, the more likely he is to employ weapons that will cause hideous civilian casualties. And this is the equation that we're watching very carefully. The Russians are no stranger to war crimes, they're no stranger to atrocities. And the great fear is that he will indeed move towards these sorts of weapons because his first strategy appears to be failing.
Obviously, the Ukrainians have huge spirit and they've got a lot to be fighting for. Is there any truth in the fact that some of the Russians actually don't really want to be fighting and are a bit confused? They were told, the Ukrainians are just going to give up straight away. They're going to welcome you, but of course it's not the case.
Yes, I'm sure there is. I mean, you've always got to be careful about, propaganda within war
exactly.
Theatres. However, it would seem logical that Russian troops, will not have been whipped into a fervour about why they should be fighting the Ukrainian army. It seems a very, unlikely thing for them to want to do of their own volition. And even though there had been considerable propaganda poured at them by Russian forces, I'm sure enough of them will have their own, thoughts on the matter to have an independent view on it.
And of course, as I mentioned, Putin is now talking about putting his nuclear arsenal on high alert. What do you think this actually means tangibly?
Well, it doesn't mean he's going to, use nuclear weapons, but it's another flex of his muscle, isn't it? It's suggesting, look, I've got numerous things in my armoury. Nuclear weapons are one of them. You didn't believe I would invade, and I did, basically, ultimately. You may want to believe that I want to use these. But again, it's going to be this question of how far is he bluffing in this, and how far might he go down this route should things go really, really badly? It looks like essentially he's made no progress in Ukraine. Would he be tempted, for example, not to attack us in this context, but would he be tempted to use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine? And the answer on that, I fear, is very much open.
Open at the moment. But of course, there are peace talks. They were supposed to happen yesterday. Now we think they're going to happen today, don't we? Is there a reason to be a little bit optimistic?
No, not in the slightest.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
Right.
look,
Okay.
he invaded despite all the discussions around that, etc., and he's not achieved his objectives so far. And the history of peace talks are they normally, kind of get underway in a serious way when there's something really to negotiate. Right now, he'd simply be negotiating his defeat, basically, which is not a position that you'd expect him to be wanting to negotiate.
Dr. Alan, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your analysis this morning. Do